Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Charlotte, North Carolina, the Ask Noah Show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah Show kicks off this hour. Joining me by co-host Mr. Steve Evans. Steve, are your bags packed? Are you ready?
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen those memes or that. There's a video out there about the two type of people that fly, with the one girl being there like the day before, and the other guy is drying his pants on the way to the airport, hanging out of the taxi. And he says it's always nice to have to be called by name, and it's, the last boarding call. I tend to be on that guy's side of things. So I'll be packing. The only thing I did today was make sure that I have a USB splitter, because that thing often gets left behind. But aside from that, that's tomorrow's job.
So, true story. When I was in college, my friend worked for an airline, and there's a practice in the airline industry known as non-revenue it's non-revenue space available, NRSA. And the process or the protocol is, if you work for the airline, it used to be you could fly with your wife or your husband, but then all the, cultural diversity stuff that comes into play, it's no longer that. Now it's your registered travel companion, because then we just avoid all that, right? And so in college, my friend asked me, he's like, hey, do you want to be my Delta wife? And I said, what's a Delta wife? And he says, well, this is basically this registered travel companion thing. Is basically any Delta flight. You just go and you fly for free anywhere you want to go. And I'm like, sure. So we did that. Well, the catch there, Steve, is you don't know if you're going to get on the plane, right? And so you can show up to the airport and you can want to get on a flight and you can plan the world's most perfect trip, but you better not book a hotel. You certainly better not book transportation. You better not rent a car. You better not do any of that, because you won't know until the last paying passenger is on the plane if you also will get on the plane. And after doing that for, 7-8 years, however long it was, I worry about nothing when I get to the airport. Much like you, I have my backpack that goes with me everywhere. I mean, anybody that's been around me knows I carry it with me everywhere. They make fun of me because it goes to restaurants and everything else. So that's always attached to me with my laptop and all of the things. And then I have one other suitcase that has clothes and my toiletries. And that's what I need to travel. And I've learned I can be happy and content in any hotel room anywhere in the world with those two items. And then for self, obviously, I bring the trunk full of goodies to do broadcasting. But like you, I'm very much kind of a last minute kind of guy. I'm a fly by the seat kind of person. And some people would say that we're just not very planned. I would say it means we're versatile. We can accommodate any situation, anytime.
It's experience, right? I've been at Red Hat going on 10 years and been flying that entire time. And at some point you're just you've either forgotten or lost things that you didn't even realize that you brought with you. And so it really helps you focus on, okay, I need the laptop, I need a change of boxers, and I need my toothbrush. Anything else, I can pick up there if I absolutely lose it or didn't bring it.
We didn't plan to talk about this, but just as a little bit of a side train, can you talk a little bit about personal entertainment? Because this is something I actually picked up from you, having seen how you travel. So you bring all the work stuff, you bring the stuff that you're going to need, and you're not dissimilar to me, where you've got your suitcase, you've got the essentials. But then typically you'll bring almost like, forgive the expression here, almost like a child, you bring an activity. And so sometimes the activity is a networking switch and a couple extra laptops and a whole bunch of stuff. Other times the activity is just your Steam Deck.
Yeah, so this time I will be bringing, so I always bring a physical book. That is one of the things that I always do. I like to read a physical book on a plane. I don't know, I'm just weird like that. But this time I'm actually going to be playing around with NT for photo management, because it has some things that I like that I can't quite get out of image. And I showed it to my wife just in a demo, and she's like, I would use that. So I'm going to start playing around with it because it has a cloud hosting thing, right? It's open source, so you can run it on your own. And as an aside, I've been running NT-Auth for my two-factor authentication app for like a year at this point. So I figured I'd give the photos a try and see if I can get that up and running and figure out how all that works, because it's a little bit of a complex beast.
So tell me about this. I haven't heard of Enti. E-N-T-Y?
E-N-T-E. So I don't actually know if it's German, but that word in German means duck. I don't know if it's at all related, but it's been around for a while. I actually looked at it originally. I didn't know that it was self-hosted at the time that I looked at it. But I did know it was out there, and they give 10 gigs away for free forever on their account, and then you can pay or whatever. And part of their shtick is so the data gets encrypted before it goes out to their servers, and they host in 3 different locations in order to have the redundancy. On top of that, like the AI stuff happens on your phone. And once it's computed on your phone by your user, then that data gets encrypted and stored beside the pictures as well. So it doesn't matter what device you're on, you don't have to recompute it. So it's got a bunch of, it's still doing the AI stuff. It seems to be, from the demos that I've seen, it seems to work pretty well. But I'm not really into that. We're more interested in like this day in history and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really interested to see how this goes. And that's kind of going to be my thing to play around with itself.
The test flight. That makes sense. So what was the feature that your wife saw that was like, hey, Steve, that's the thing we need in our life right there. That's the thing.
It pushes the memories.
It pushes them. Oh, okay. So like, so the whole like this day in history kind of a thing is what you're talking about.
And it pushes it to you. And honestly, the app is nice. Like from what we looked at, the app is well designed and it looks nice and right. That's just the end of it. So.
And it did more, or it did it better than Image? What was the thing that it did that Image didn't do?
Well, Image doesn't do that. You actually have to go into the app and search that stuff out yourself, whereas this one will push it to a screen for you so that it kind of surfaces those memories for you.
So maybe this is me just not understanding what you're telling me, but like when I open my Image app, the first thing, the little
have to open
header
it.
at the top is
that is exactly the point. You have to open it.
I see. So it's almost like a push notification. Hey, did you know that a few years ago, and then it comes to
exactly.
That's what
she has never opened the Image app. And did we do that last year itself? I don't know. However long that I've been playing around with Image, more than 6 months, she's never opened that app.
Okay.
She doesn't open her Apple photo app either. It pushes to her and then she just, consumes it that way. And that's the way she likes it.
Sure. Okay. Well, different strokes for different folks. I got to tell you, if I didn't I want to see memories. I do like that functionality. I'm with you there. It reminds me of things I ordinarily would never bump into. In fact, true story, right before I got on a plane to come here to Charlotte, North Carolina, I opened my Image app, and one of the things was 7 years ago, and it's a picture. I'll have to send it to you. It's kind of funny. It's a picture of my youngest kid climbing on top of my middle kid while my other kid is looking at the two, and we're in a car driving down the interstate, and it's all manner of bad. It's all the things that you shouldn't be doing as a parent. And it was just funny. And so I had to take a picture of it, totally forgot about it, and pop back up. And it was when my family was on the way to Self 7 years ago, or whatever it was. And so I'm with you there, but where I say different strokes for different folks, I think if that was popping up on my phone and I wasn't specifically asking for it, or I wasn't looking for it, I think that would be a knock against it, not a knock for.
For me, it's definitely a knock for it, right? I side with my wife. I also barely open up the Image app, even though that I know it's there and I kind of care and feed for it. I just don't care to do that. But if it happened to pop up as like a little notification as an option, sure, maybe today I feel like it. I have 5 minutes. What did I do in this time?
Yeah. Well, you have to let me know what you think. So it has like the Image server where there's a thing that's running that you're self-hosting and it syncs it back up, or you're using their cloud functionality?
No, I'm going to be self-hosting. Like the getting up and running with their thing is just making an account and then you're off to the races. There's nothing there. For the self-hosted app, you have to have S3 storage and you have to go through and do some configuration just like you do for image.
Okay. Well, you let me know what you think as self rolls on and as you come out. By the way, this year is retro year. So it's a retro computing themed year, and this is going to be producer JT, our executive producer for the show. This is his bread and butter. If there was ever anything that strikes his fancy, it is retro computing. And so in years past, they've done some really cool things. So for example, one of the years, they took older machines, things like 486s, 386s. They took, I think, a PlayStation at one time, a Nintendo, those sorts of things. And they tried to bring them back to life. And the interesting thing that I think is absolutely applicable in 2025, the thing that stood out to me was stuff like the 486, even though it was ancient and old, you could still load an operating system, granted an old operating system, but you could load an operating system on, and it was as functional, at least as it was back in 1992, right? By contrast, by comparison, things like the Sony PlayStation, you would turn the box on, you could get as far as the little screen that said sign into Sony servers, and then, those servers are offline, so you can't sign into it anymore, and it's garbage, right? And so you've got this gigantic, perfectly functional hardware that you can't actually functionally use because somebody at Sony decided that you couldn't. By the way, as an aside, did you ever use I'm gonna get the vernacular wrong here, but it was like redneck language schema in like the old versions of Red Hat?
Yeah. Yep.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Funny. Okay. Well, so anyway, so this year it's going to be the theme is retro computing. And so there's going to be a retro swap. You can bring your retro computers, you can bring your old hardware, and you can swap it. The thing that as I was kind of digging into different retro things or kind of looking back and the nostalgia of old computers and that sort of thing, man, I got to tell you, I miss the days when we built tech to be tech, right? Where it wasn't built to be sleek and modern and fancy and that kind of stuff, where we just built it to like, hey, let's hammer the biggest, chunkiest battery that we can get on this thing. Let's put all the ports on the computer. We'll stack what we can on the back because cables come out the back. What we can't fit on the back, we'll start putting on the sides. And then we want to have a CD-ROM drive, and we want to have a floppy drive, and everything you could pack into a computer. There was a time, there was a day, there was an era in which we tried to build laptops as functionally best as we could. And it seems as though in modern times, you could change out the batteries because they were all interchangeable. We've divorced that, and we've gone to this model of thin and light and pretty and fancy and then we got dongle books. Now we got things hanging off the left and off the right and all the things so that you can adapt the thing to get to the thing so you can connect the thing. At the very moment I'm reloading my personal laptop and I've got, I've got 3 things hanging out the side of it because I need to get wired Ethernet, and there is no wired Ethernet port, and I need to have Wi-Fi, and it's just, I don't know. There's something I miss about that generation of the way of doing things. And like I say, it's kind of nice that they all still work. You can still fire them all up. So producer JT sent a picture of the back of his SUV. He's got the entire thing, Steve, the entire back, like he folded all the seats out. It's all filled with retro tech. And then that didn't fit. So he mounted a roof thing to the top of his SUV and stacked more retro tech on top of it. And even that didn't cover it. So he attached a receiver hitch. Have you seen those little things? They've got like a little tray that hangs off the back of your vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay. He did one of those. I promise you he's exceeding the weight limit of that puppy. Okay. And he's got a big Pelican case on the back of that tray that hangs off the back of his SUV. And he's got that loaded up with retro tech. So there's going to be some retro tech.
And you know what? That's probably only a quarter of his personal stash.
He left the good stuff at home. So southeastlinuxfest.org, it is not too late to sign up. The dates are June 13th through the 15th. It's coming up this weekend. We would love to see you there. It's at the Sheraton Charlotte Airport Hotel. It is, I would say, one of the easiest Linux fests. So a couple things. First of all, it's comparatively small in nature. So if you're looking to not be overwhelmed It's a great place to start because you're going to find friends right when you walk through the door. The second thing is getting to the door is not that hard because it's right off of the airport. So there's some of these places, like you go to some of these conferences and you land in an airport and then you got to drive 45 minutes, an hour, whatever to get there. And so if you don't have a rental car, you're spending either money on an Uber, you're trying to find transportation. Not the case in Charlotte. In Charlotte, you land in the airport and a Southern boy will pick you up and drive you to the hotel, which is just a couple miles away from the airport. You can come in, you can participate in the fest. The other part of it is some of the fests, they're spread out over multiple buildings. In fact, most of them are spread out over multiple buildings and in sort of a campus. Not so with Self. It is literally 2 hallways. So you walk in the front of the hotel, your room is in the hotel if you're staying there. You walk down one hallway and you're able to see part of the hallway track. You turn the corner and we're right at the apex of that corner. Turn the other way, walk down the other place. Everything is right there. So it's a really easy, approachable event. The staff wishes to remind you, attendance is free. So you can come for free. We don't ask for anything. There's a way to be a supporting member if you want to do that. There are ways to sponsor tables if you want to do that. But the event itself is free. They encourage you to come. There was a story, this is maybe 2-3 years ago. Little boy came to Self. And afterwards, his mom came up to us as staff and she said, "Hey, I just have to let you know, we don't have a lot of money. In fact, we have no money. And my son has always had an interest in tech. He's always had an interest in doing these sorts of things. And every time he comes home, either from school, or his friends, and he's like, 'Hey, can I go to this camp? Can I do this thing?' We always have to tell him no. And it just crushes our soul that he has this organic interest in tech. And we never can afford to do all of these things." And he came to us and he's like, "Can we go to Southeast Linux Fest? Can we please go? I don't think there's a cost." And so we looked at it and sure enough. And so this little boy got to come to Self and got to participate and just had an absolute blast. And it brought his mom literally to tears. And then the people that were around that were listening to this conversation brought them to tears just because it was so cool to hear that, hey, this is really having an impact to people that otherwise wouldn't have exposure to tech. So we invite you to join us at Southeast Linux Fest. It's this coming weekend, Friday the 13th through Sunday the 15th at the Sheraton Charlotte Airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. As always, Self is 100% free to attend. You can look at the schedule at southeastlinuxfest.org. Their theme this year, retro computing. So if you have some cool retro gear you'd like to bring or to swap, list it on the website. And they'll once again be offering free ham radio license exams, ham radio cram sessions. So if you want to get your ham license but don't really think you're up to snuff, you can go to the cram session. They're going to be running a special event, W4L, which is their call sign, so you can come in and participate and see what it's like. And then there's a round-the-clock LAN party. There's a GPG signing party. The only thing they ask is please register to attend so that they know how many people are going to show up. Steve, is there anything that I could say or do that would potentially light the bug in your ear for ham radio, or is that a lost cause? Am I fighting a losing battle?
I suppose the idea of it is interesting to me. I'm not sure that I would do ham radio, but there are, I forget what it is, but the truckers have been moving away from CBs and to a different type of technology that I was listening to, which is cheaper and has better range and stuff like that. And I'd be convinced to possibly poke at that. But ham radio itself, maybe.
Are you talking about like GMRS? Is it GMRS?
I'm not sure. You know what? I heard about it on a tech podcast about the people, how CBs are kind of going the way of the Dodo in favor of another tech for long-range communication. So I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about when it comes to this stuff, to be honest with you. So out of my depth.
Well, okay. So here's my pitch, and I'll just leave it here and see if the seed blossoms or if it dies in the sand, so to speak. But the thing that I would tell you is appealing about ham radio, or where I think your appeal would be, is it's the federal government giving you permission to go and experiment and play at the rawest form of radio communication. So in the same way that, 2.5, I mean, you're living this, right? 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, there's so much congestion, there's so much noise that trying to get usable Wi-Fi at times, as you're well aware, can be abysmal. It can be problematic. And so one of the things that the ham radio does is they give you a licensed piece of spectrum, a licensed part of the radio space that you can use however it is you like. And then and then above and beyond that, that's the federal regulations. Then above and beyond that, there's a gentleman's agreement where all the amateurs came together and said, hey, if we all try to talk at the same time on the same frequency, it's not going to work. If we all try to set our devices to the same frequency at the same time and send data, it's not going to work. So here's what we'll do instead. Instead, we'll have a gentleman's agreement. If you're doing this activity, you're going to operate over here. If you're going to do that activity, you operate over there. It doesn't mean you can't do these things. It doesn't mean you can't, but it's a gentleman's agreement. And so everybody in the ham radio community has a vested interest in everything else working. And so basically any piece of communication technology, if you look back far enough, you'll find that it typically has its origins in ham radio. Some geek was playing with it first, and then some company found that concept and turned it into something bigger. The other thing that's happening itself this year that I think is kind of cool have you played at all with the the name is going to escape me now. What am I thinking of? The Meshtastic. Have you played it all with Meshtastic, or does that spark your bubble at all?
I haven't. That is mildly interesting to me, actually, more so than ham radio, just because. But I haven't really had. Well, you know me. I'm a slow adopter of things, which is a weird dichotomy in the world that I live in, because it has to be. It competes for all the other things, and so it just hasn't bubbled up to the top as something that I would find useful currently.
I'll tell you, the thing that appeals to me about the Meshtastic stuff is that it's decentralized and that it isn't beholden to anything or anyone. You don't even need to have licensing. It just effectively kind of works, right off the bat or whatever. So that part's interesting to me. Like anything that's unlicensed, I get concerned that, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Those sorts of things. So time will tell, but there will be Meshtastic operating at Self. And so if you're interested, highly, highly encourage you to do that. But I hope to see you at Self this year. Oops, not that button, not that button, not that button. No, this button. There's a little drama brewing across the internet. The X Libre X server is a fork of the xorg X server. It was started by longtime xorg maintainer Enrico Riebelt, and the project aims to develop and improve the xorg display server as an alternative to the newer, more fashionable Wayland display protocol. So if you've been living under a rock for the last decade, you might not know that the display server that has been... So here's the deal. And Steve, I'm not going to ask you to comment. There's a Red Hat component to this, and I know that there's absolutely no official connection, so I won't ask you to comment or anything like that. But I might ask you some basic technical questions. Is it accurate to say that xorg came out at a time that we really weren't in a place where we were planning to have large, complicated graphical things? It was really, we started with a command line thing and then eventually said, hey, we want to draw a cursor, and hey, we want to draw some windows, and then it just kind of snowballed in from there. Is that a technically accurate explanation of, roughly anyway, of how xorg came into our life?
Xorg is like a conglomeration of a ton of different things that we needed to be able to do, and we just kind of lumped them all together. And so because of that, they grew organically in coordination with each other, but they were not purposely designed for that. So for example, the ability to cut and paste things from one application to another was never part of the original design, right? We first needed to draw like little graphics, and then we needed to draw a desktop, and that, all of these things kind of stacked. And so because of that, there are some kind of security concerns. But to, put a point on what you're saying, it was an evolution of a software application stack that has taken, I believe, about 4 decades at this point.
There's some really cool things when X first came out, and as it was being developed through that time, Man, there were some sweet times in the 90s. I very distinctly remember when I was first getting into Linux. And this is a time when Windows was extremely dominant. In fact, at that time, Novell was extremely dominant, and Windows was just starting to claw away market share from Novell. This is, mid 90s, maybe late 90s. And I remember starting to get into Linux and starting to play with things. And I remember being around other Windows sysadmins and thinking, I was like, do you know how cool it is that the X system has a server and a client component? And they were confused. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, they're separate, right? And so you can connect. I can have a local X client and I can connect to a remote X server and I can draw this thing over there. And the closest they had to that, Steve, was things like PC Anywhere, right? Where it's essentially screen scraping and controlling, and so they're dialing in over a 56K modem to kind of scrape the screen sort of a thing. And here I am being able to, and so to me, it was just the absolute coolest thing. So fast forward to about 13, 14, somewhere in there. And there started to be a ongoing discussion that says, hey, we really need to move away from this, what is at this point an antiquated technology, and we need to kind of embrace the future way of doing things. And so into our life comes Wayland. And I don't want to get lost too far in the technical details of what part is the compositor and what part is the display manager. But suffice to say, Wayland began to replace xorg, or maybe more accurately to say, Wayland, along with a collection of other utilities, began to replace what formerly was being handled by xorg. And so, unsurprisingly, there's been less and less involvement, or thus less development and less focus on X-based stuff, and more in development and more focus on Wayland-based stuff. Okay, so far so good, right? This week, something that can only be described as weird happened, and the weird thing that happened was the xorg X11 Libre is a recent fork of xorg. And so essentially what the X Libre folks were trying to do is they said, hey, we get it, Wayland the future, all the things, everybody likes it, yay, go Wayland, but also we still kind of like X. And so there are reasons as to why you might want to keep X around and why you might actually even think that's a better solution than Wayland. Not very much, not the common take on it, but certainly there's somebody that believes that. And so open source, best thing about it is flavors of all kind, different strokes from different folks. So X11 Libre comes along and they make a fork of xorg. So far, again, nothing really out of the ordinary. People fork stuff all the time for all sorts of reasons. So it's initiated by this guy, Enrico Rebelt. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm probably not. A prominent and formerly active xorg developer. The project emerged as in early 2025 following Wiegelt's ban from the freedesktop.org. Now, if you're not familiar with freedesktop.org, that's the organization that houses or hosts xorg development. Reportedly, it was due to disagreements and accusations of censorship. Now, this is the part where Steve is going to stay silent, by Red Hat and other maintainers. So the stated goal of X11 Libre was to revitalize and modernize the aging X11 codebase. So essentially, everybody else is focused on the new shiny Wayland thing, and there's a group of developers that say, hey, we should probably keep X11 going, and if nobody wants to do that on X11 proper, then we'll fork it. So it has its roots going back over 4 decades. The fork was motivated over concerns that the xorg development had stagnated, with most of the maintainers regarding the project as effectively complete and only providing bug fixes, while the codebase itself had become difficult to maintain or evolve due to technical debt and fragility. X11 Libre aims to perform extensive code cleanups, structural improvements, enhance functional and maintainability, and break from what the founder describes as corporate capture or the toxic development environments, particularly those influenced by Red Hat. So effectively, the argument that they're making, now I'm not necessarily saying there's merit to this or not merit to this, I'm just telling you what is being widely reported on the internet. There is a belief, right, wrong, or otherwise, that corporations have an interest in having their products advance, and that X11 stagnates that progress and you can't push people into Wayland. I venture to say that it's 80% smoke, 20% fire. Now that's my wet finger in the air. Take it for what it's worth. But what is undeniably weird and what happened was there was a ton of merge requests that just got closed, that just randomly got closed. And nobody is really saying why those merger requests got closed, why they're not there. But they just essentially got scrubbed for the internet. And so the fork has generated a significant amount of discussion and debate. Some see it as a necessary and positive step, reminiscent of the x386 to xorg transition many decades ago. Others are skeptical, pointing to the risk of fragmentation and the difficulty of safety of modernizing such a complex, fragile code base. I mean, in the end, it's 40 years old. What we knew about technology and the way that we wrote code 40 years ago just isn't the same as the way that we view technology today and the way that we write code today. It certainly doesn't take into account the kind of things that we're trying to do with display servers today that was, just wasn't around back then. And so there's also a pretty decent interest from BSD users who always trail behind the Linux guys. But they see X11 Libre as a potential alternative as to being forced into Wayland. And while the BSD guys have a nice target to talk about, I would tell you that they're certainly not the only ones that feel like X11 is kind of the way to go. So as of June 2025, the X11 Libre code is available on GitHub with two main repositories, Xserver, the main fork, and xorg testing. There's active development. It's ongoing. There's recent commits focused on code cleanups and legacy hardware. There's no official release has been made, but a first release is anticipated later this month. The project is currently aimed at developers and testers, not necessarily end users. And of course, you should be aware that it may break compatibility with existing binaries because, we're trying to fork a thing that was never designed to be drug into 2025, and the rest of the world has kind of moved on to a different direction. Now, according to Enrico Wiebelt, the founder of X11 Libre, there were some corporations that were directly responsible for banning him from the freedesktop.org infrastructure, which hosts xorg. That ban included the deletion of his account, repositories, tickets, merge requests, request over 140 contributions associated with the xorg project. And so he's saying that essentially, hey, this is censorship, and it's an attempt to try to kill X by controlling the project's direction and stifling competition. Frankly, if again, my wet finger in the air says 80% smoke and 20% fire, and here's why. I've yet to see with my own eyes or yet to experience where companies want to spend money to kill free things. Right? That just doesn't make sense to me, nor does it really stand to benefit a particular company, any particular company, Red Hat or otherwise. The reality is that anybody that's using Red Hat Enterprise Linux is not digging into I have a preference on my display. So the vast majority of them probably running headless. But even above and beyond that, they're going to take what comes down the pipe from their software manufacturer because they're operating at a scale at which they don't have the luxury of digging into esoteric things like, I want this particular display server, the other. So the entire thing seems weird to me and stands out as strange. I do think it's awkward that all of these merge requests just got scrubbed. I do think it's interesting that many of these things just got closed. Doesn't seem like that's the response that you would get, but I'm not entirely buying hook, line, and sinker that it's, a corporate plot to destroy X. I'm just can't quite get there. But anyway, we want to make sure that you're aware of it. We'll have some links for you in the show notes, podcast.asknoahshow.com. You can read up the Register has a pretty decent write-up on this, as well as we'll have link for you in the show notes, the GitHub to the X11 Libre X server. But, in the end, here's my takeaway. My takeaway is this is why open source is great. This is the benefit, right? If it was a closed source thing and you had companies that own patents and copyrights and those sorts of things, we wouldn't even be having this discussion out in the open. We'd be talking about the fact that there's one company taking another organization to a court and they're suing them for IP infringement and this, that, and the other. And then whoever has the more expensive lawyers probably wins that. It's pretty predictable how that would play out. In this particular case, the worst thing that's going to happen is yeah, okay, well, you got kicked out of one particular project, but you can fork it and you can go to a different place and you can carry on your merry way. And so if we want to drag X kicking and screaming into 2025, there's no reason that you can't do it. The thing that I think is kind of cool here is it is pretty neat that not only are they forking the project, but they're going to try to bring it forward. They're going to try to fix some of the legacy cruft that just was never designed to work in X. Is it beneficial? Is it necessary? Is it any better than Wayland? Does it solve anything? I don't know. Is it like, does it have an end benefit, or are we swimming upstream when the rest of the Linux world has been moving for the last 10 years over to Wayland? I mean, my gosh, even Canonical, they started by, they were going to try to compete with Mir, and then eventually said, well, we'll take the parts that are beneficial to Wayland, we'll adopt Wayland, and we'll turn Mir into the middle layer that allows us to use Wayland. So even Canonical, got on board. So I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as the internet is making it out to be. I agree it's a little weirder than just that's what you would expect from an open source fork. I don't know why the attention. As somebody brought up to me earlier this week, sometimes closing the Office windows, like when you close the curtain in the Office windows, draws more attention to what's going on in the Office than if you just leave the windows open. If the windows are open and then you see two people talking or having a conversation, regardless of what the context of the conversation is, doesn't draw any particular attention. The second you close the blinds, everybody assumes something's up. So from that perspective, maybe wasn't the wisest decision, but we thought you would want to know.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of June 8th, 2025, here's the Linux and open source news. Snapd 2.69 has been released. Sway 1.11 is out. PeerTube 7.2 is now available. In distro news, Rocky Linux 9.6 is out, and the Linux Mint team has announced that Linux Mint 20 has reached EOL. In security news, malicious PyPI, NPM, and Ruby packages have exposed an ongoing open source supply chain attacks. Open source Chaos Rat is being used in recent attacks targeting Linux, according to Acronis Research Threat Unit. Kali GPT is a groundbreaking new AI assistant explicitly tailored for Kali Linux. In other open source AI news, RedNote joins China's open source AI wave with the launch of Dots.llm1. MIT and Recursion have unveiled Boltz 2, a revolutionary open source biomolecular co-folding model with advanced structure and binding affinity prediction. And lastly, ChatGPT has been used to disable Secure Boot in a lockdown device. Modded BIOS reflash facilitated a fresh window in Linux installs.
Steve, there is a new terminal among us, and I want to start by saying, because this is what I would want to know up front, it's a closed source terminal, so take that for what it's worth. But there is a new terminal among us, and the new terminal incorporates AI to try to make things easier for newcomers. And so for some time, the Linux terminal is something that some people never use. Other people, it's always open and ready for work. And then there are those that are kind of the in-between who use the terminal for things that they can't do with a GUI or they need to remote in over SSH. And so most terminals, they all get the job done. They're different flavors, different looks, and all the things, but you type the commands, it runs the commands, you close it, simple as that, right? So the terminal we're talking about is Warp. And Warp is a proprietary app that can be installed on any Linux operating system. And thanks to AI, Warp is an intelligent terminal app that can do things other terminals cannot do. It allows you to create workflows, and then it uses AI to help you code faster, even solve problems with Linux. There's an agent mode that allows you to use the terminal app in natural language. For example, you could type, in just plain English, I need to enable SSH traffic through my firewall. And Warp does a little bit of research. It finds out what firewall you're using, and then it figures out how to allow SSH traffic through, and then it asks you to type your user password so it can complete the action. And it's pretty cool. Now, here's the thing that came to my mind. I got to slow down a little bit. So first things first, would you be open to a new terminal that incorporates AI or machine learning to help you get the job done to make it easier for you? Or is that a thing that you would say just is not practical or not useful?
So Warp's been around for at least a year or two on my radar. I would be interested to see how this stacks up against the latest Rel AI thing, where you're supposed to be able to just type, C and then your question, because it's supposed to do the same thing. I'd be very interested to see what the difference there is.
So that was exactly where my mind went to. So it's a proprietary tool, so it already has a knock against it. On top of that, to your point, Red Hat, I think they call it Lightspeed, right? Or terminal powered by Lightspeed or something like that. The concept is that you can type, is exactly as you said, you type C and then you type the English thing that you're looking to do, and it does it. Now, Red Hat is working towards making that local. So at the moment, it relies on an external server, but at some point in the near future, it's going to be able to do all of that locally. If the case, why would I want this, and why would I not just use the Red Hat thing and or fork it and or use it?
Well, I suppose I'm going to bet that this one's prettier. I'm going to bet that Warp is significantly prettier than that. The difference here is that if you have to work on, so where I like the idea of Rel AI is it's likely to be running on the host where you're running it, as opposed to needing a specific terminal. And for someone like me that has to jump into client environments, and probably you to some extent, you don't have a ton of control over adopting a different shell. For example, like everybody loves fish, but that's not really practical for me because I interface with so many computers or have to use a jump server that I can't connect directly from my desktop. It would be the same thing with Warp. Like, it'd be one of those things that it'd be interesting for my desktop, but not so super interesting for me in my professional, because I'd have to do some juggling of like, okay, I wanted to do this thing, type it in Warp, then have it figure it out, and then go paste that into the terminal that I was actually working in.
All that. I could see it. I can see this kind of thing for new users. I can see this kind of thing for, I have no experience with Linux and I don't know what I'm doing. And so can you give me a terminal that kind of baby steps me through, walks me through? I can maybe see the argument for that. I'll be honest with you, if I said I'd struggle with a little bit of the idea that you'd want to use this as a day-to-day thing. The only thing I could think that could potentially be kind of useful, I was looking through like the workflow things where you can outline and say, hey, I want you to, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that. There are absolutely times where it's, I SSH into a machine, I gather this piece of information, I go into this directory, I gather this thing, or I copy this file, and then I go out, and then I got to do it again to another machine, those sorts of things. And so to a degree, I could kind of see how that could be helpful and having a tool that automates that for me. But then I get down to like, yeah, but that's what I'm using Ansible for now, right? Is if I have to repeat a thing 35 times, I'm going to go write an Ansible script one time, and then I'll just run it against 35 machines, and I'll crack the nut a different way. So there's the proprietary thing. There's the Red Hat has basically the same thing built in, and it's open source so far as I understand. And there are other tools that accomplish the same thing. So then I'm left with meh. But I'm interested. If you use Warp or have used Warp or have an interest in using Warp, I'd be interested to hear from you at live@asknoahshow.com. I think there might be a target audience for this. I'm just struggling to know what the target audience is for this. Do you want to do some feedback?
Let's do it.
Our first email comes in from Steven. Not you, Steve, the other Steven. Not that Steve, the different. Oh, jeez. I'm getting back to playing drums after about a 6-month hiatus due to a rotator cuff surgery and rehab. I have an old Android 8 tablet, and I think it's at the point of an upgrade. Would you recommend the Pine Tab 2, Pine Note, Chromebook 2-in-1, or another cheap Android tablet? I'd like to have something that stays somewhat current, but it's mainly used for annotating PDFs and then merging them into a set list type of a document. I have some concerns with the Pine Tab 2. It's already a couple of years old, and the Pine Note is somewhat experimental. I've thought about non-open source ebooks, but I don't want to get locked into a proprietary system just for this purpose. Any suggestions? So first things first, Steve, are you a tablet guy at all?
So not a tablet, but my thought here is there are several convertible laptops out there. Friend of the show actually sent my wife one, and she loves it, right? And it would double, because you can fold it over and double it as a tablet or whatever. she tosses that little thing in her bag, and it's more solid than an actual tablet. And so I wondered, like, my first thought when I saw this was, would that be sufficient? Because it's running full Linux OS, but it's still got the touchscreen to do whatever doodling you need it to.
So I have touched on this on the show before. Maybe not quite to the depth I'm about to go into it, but I bought the Pine Tab 2 for this exact purpose. This is the only thing I wanted it to do. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that if I could walk into Wally World or name your big box store, and I could walk out with an electronic music book, I would already own it. But no such device exists. And the things that do exist are they're hugely proprietary and complicated and are really designed for syncing between a bunch of devices and doing all sorts of all the things I'm not interested in. What I'm interested in, Steve, do you ever play guitar or any sort of chorded instrument?
I have a banjo.
Banjo. So when you're going through a song, it will go through a chord progression, right? And so you might have a G, then you might have an E, then you might have a C, then you might have an A, and then back to G, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So the concept, and I didn't come up with this, as some dude in Nashville did, but basically somebody realized that all music is basically the same. And we start with an intro, we do a verse, then we do another verse, then maybe we do a chorus, and we do another verse, then we do a bridge, and we do a chorus, and we do an ending, and it's basically all the same. And so there's minor variations, but largely, if you're playing in 4/4 time signature, so you're counting measures, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, that's one measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's another measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's another measure, so on and so forth, right? Instead of annotating music like you would typically do in traditional piano music, you can abbreviate and just say, I'm going to play the G chord. And if you listen to modern music, what you're going to find is more often than not, if you have the G chord, it'll be held for an entire measure, and then maybe a second measure, and then maybe we switch to a C chord or whatever it was, that you hold that for a measure, and then go to a different one for a measure, and then occasionally you'll get one that will say, like, you'll hold it for half a measure, and then you'll play the other, they play a different chord for the second half of the measure. And so there's a system called the Nashville number system. It's very popular in Nashville for quick annotating of music. You can listen to a song one time and you can just count in your head. You can listen to where the chord changes. Even if you have no musical experience at all, you can do this. You can go listen to a song and listen to where there's one particular sound and then it changes to a higher pitch or a lower pitch. And if you count the beats of the song, you can hear where that'll happen most of the time. In a 4/4 song, every 4 beats, occasionally every 2 beats, and then you can annotate that. And so that system has been around for a long time. And in drums, it's particularly useful because we are less, if I'm playing drums, basically I need to know when to start, when to stop, what we'll say, musicality of that song is, and then basically I'm good to go. And I can keep track of where I am in the song based on those chord progression and those chord changes. And so there are many pieces of software that model after that concept of the Nashville number system. So the piece of software that I've been using is a piece of software called Songbook Pro. And the thing that I like about Songbook Pro, like our emailer asks, it allows you to annotate PDFs. It runs on Android or iOS, and it follows the Nashville number system, although I just make my own custom PDFs. The thing that I bought the Pine Tab 2 for, I want to recreate Songbook Pro. In fact, I have gone as far as I wish to buy the thing. Like, I would pay the developer who wrote this piece of software extra money if he would just sell me a one-time thing. I promised never to distribute it, copy it, all the things, but I just need access to the source code so that I could have a developer get it to run from what is designed to run on iOS and Android onto the Pine Tab. I tried all manner of things, Android emulation, you name it, and I just wasn't able to get to anything that's even remotely usable. I found some success in tabbed PDF viewers, and it's more usable than not usable, but it still sucks if I'm honest with you. And especially when you're live music environment, the things that I can work around in a technical environment, I can't work around in a live music environment, right? You get to the end of the song, you'll have 2 beats before you got to be in the next song. I have to be able to just reach over and tap the thing or swipe the screen, and it has to go to the next song. I don't have time to try to get my finger lined up exactly on the tab thing. I don't have time to, there just isn't time. It's live. It has to happen. It's cutting live tissue. And so I've been very disappointed with what's available in the open source world to accomplish this. And the frustrating thing is it's not that hard. And so two e-readers ask, I would love to know if you find something. First of all, please let me know. If you don't find something, I would love to stay in contact with you because I'd love to go in on trying to fix this with somebody. Talk to me about Proton, Steve.
Well, so I just kind of poked around and I saw that they have a Windows version. I would hazard a guess that Proton might be able to help you out with some of this stuff. I'm not exactly sure, but if you get your hands on the Windows version and play around with launching it via Proton, just because of the extra effort that Valve has put in, not only Valve, but for example, the Glorious Egg Roll people that do their own spin of Proton in order to smooth out all of those patent encumbered issues that you as an end user can agree to, but they can't, places like Valve can't distribute for them, right? It's kind of like the distributions that pre-bake in the NVIDIA driver. Like you, as an end user, you can accept that, but a company like Red Hat or Canonical can't bake that in because it's company to company. That would be what I'd take a peek to see if I could use the Windows copy and see if it would work, because then any touchscreen should be able to work for you.
Do you think I'd run into problems that it's only available in the Microsoft Store?
I don't know. It was just a thought. I didn't even see that it was in the Microsoft Store. I just saw on their website that they support iOS, Android, and Windows.
Kevin writes in and says, hi guys, appreciated the discussion on pfSense versus OpenSense. I've been considering a move to OpenSense myself. Have you by chance tried running OpenSense on a Netgate hardware? Spoiler alert, you can't. Netgate will not let you install software on their device. There might be some way to hack around that, but they don't even let you install their own software on Netgate appliances. You got to go apply to them and say, hey, may I please have permission to reinstall the operating system on the appliance I paid for from you? And then if they approve and if the stars align, they will send you a link to what's hosted on Nextcloud, firmware that you can then go download and reflash onto your Netgate appliance. But like, you can't even install their own stuff on their thing, let alone install it with something else. And so a few years ago, we actually stopped selling Netgate appliances in part because we knew we were going to make a transition to something we just weren't exactly sure what. And so the first step was getting them off of proprietary hardware and onto something that could be installed with anything. And these days, Steve, there's so many different hardware routing appliances out there. My budget favorite is still the Sophos because they're cheap and they're highly available and they're great. The Protectleys are kind of the Cadillac choice, if you were.
That's what I roll with. Yeah, I've got a Protectly.
And that does it for email. So we would love to hear from you. The show only happens if you write in and give us your questions. If there's something you're struggling with, want to know how to use, want to learn more about, or want Steve and I to dig into, that's why we give our time away on this show. Is the whole idea is two Linux nerds, people who eat, live, and breathe Linux all day long, who may drive their living from Linux, support Linux in their household. We're happy to do that. But you got to write in live at AskNoahShow.com or join us live at 6 p.m. Central on Tuesdays. The music in our ears means we're out of time. I'm off to go get food, and then I'm headed back to go continue preparation for Southeast Linux Fest coming up this weekend. I hope to see you there. Charlotte Airport, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If not, and I should say, we'll be broadcasting on Saturday most of the day, and we'll probably start on Friday, but certainly throughout Saturday we'll give you an in-depth look inside of the various different sessions. If not, we'll see you back here on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central, AskNoahShow.com.